There we go. So as a maps coach, I also own a brokerage here in Kansas City that's specifically for property management. It's called Ad Astra Realty. We have over 750 doors that we manage. And I've worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of real estate investors. And the one thing I can tell you is when I help somebody buy an investment property and then we're going to manage it for the next few years, I want to make sure that what I'm telling them is accurate. And that's why I got really good at the math and figuring out what works and doesn't work. I'm also an investor in Keller Williams Realty Diamond Partners, which is Keller Williams Olathe, Kansas, for all of you out there. And I'm a former team leader, ALC member. I'm still an associate broker there, but that's where it goes. So there's my contact information. If you have any questions or comments of, this is the greatest class you've ever been to, or I really need some help, you can point out all the directions that I need to get better at. That's fine. But my preferred communication is email, especially on something this big. Today, we're gonna take the time to learn 4 or 5 different ways of measuring a return on investment properties. There's no way I'm going to be able to answer everybody's questions. So I've got Jackie Lennon on here. Wave, Jackie.
Hi.
Jackie Lennon is a productivity coach at Keller Williams Olathe, and every once in a while I'll check in with her, see if she's got any questions. I'm hoping to get done with this by about 11:50 Central Time, so that leave some room for questions. I'm willing to stay on this thing until about 12:15, 12:20. Some of you may have to go right at noon or before. That's okay. I'm just here to offer value where I can. So hold your questions, write them down, email them, maybe send Jackie the questions or whatever. She doesn't really want the questions, but email me the questions afterwards, and I'll be glad to get back to you. I love this stuff. It's really a lot of fun for me. And it's a skill, guys. I wasn't born knowing how to do all of this math or work with investors. I just couldn't. I am not a normal home buyer, home seller, real estate agent. I just want to know, can the house make money? That's really all I want to know. We want to do that right. So it's just a skill, and I'm hoping to take you through the beginning processes. If this is really just a review for you, again, and I mean this sincerely, if you see something that I've gotten wrong or something that I do differently than you do, send me an email. I'd love your input. And there's my contact information. So with that, let's get started. Are you ready, Jackie?
I'm ready.
All right, fantastic. So let's go here. All right, so the 3 areas that we need to consider when we're buying an investment property, these are the 3 areas I've identified over the years. The first one is criteria. What is it we're looking for? Is it a single family home? Is it a multifamily home? Is it a commercial property? What's the price point? Just because you can afford something, do you want something less or do you want at your price point? What's the location? What's the condition? What kind of tenants will it attract? What will the returns be? And I kind of said those backwards because really what I want to know first of all is what is the return you're looking for? Because when you buy an investment property, you're buying income. You could buy income through stocks. You could buy income through bonds. You could buy income through cryptocurrency if you actually believe in that stuff. You can tell I'm an old guy, but what you're doing with your money is you're buying income. So what are the returns you're looking for? I could do another entire 2 hours on criteria alone, but that's not why we're here today. We're here to talk about math. We're going to go through some very basic expectations of returns and how to measure them. And we'll cover that in a second. And yet the third area that I really, really want to talk about here is spidey senses. And I used to call that voodoo, by the way. And what I mean by that is you're a realtor. You know whether a neighborhood is going up or going down. So are you taking a chance on one of those 2 things? Do you know if there's a sewage plant being built 1 mile to the south? Do you know if there's a new school being built? What kind of tenant will this attract? Will it attract, are you looking for large families or small families? Of course, I don't want to step on the 7 protected classes. We can't rent based on, but what kind of person will this attract? We'll take anybody, but what will it attract? And, does it have curb appeal? I mean, if you're buying a house on the corner with so many trees that you can't see it and it's on a 6-lane road, I don't know if that's what you're looking to have. So we could do a lot of talk about spidey senses and criteria. And yet, like I said earlier, today is about the math. And so this is what we're going to talk about a little bit today. We're going to talk about gross gross rent multipliers and cap rates and cash on cash and total return. And if I have time, and I doubt seriously I will, debt coverage ratios. So we'll cover those things right there. Do you have any questions, Jackie, before we get started?
I do not, other than maybe you're going to cover it. So maybe, do you even go look at a house first, or do you do the math first in your head before you take time to go visit it?
Hey, great question. I love that question. Something I hadn't even thought about putting in the course. The fact of the matter is I got so consumed with working with investors, and when I was working this, over 90% of my investors lived somewhere between Vancouver, Canada and San Diego, California. So I had nobody to show the properties to. I was not interested in going and looking at the properties until I had done the math on them. And so I would do the gross rent multiplier that I'm going to show you here just to see if I even had a consideration. So I would look through the pictures. I would compare it with what else I knew I could get around that neighborhood. Again, it's just a skill you develop. And then I would do the math. If I liked the math, then I would gather 4 or 5 properties that I liked, that I did like the math, and I would go out and view them all in a few hours. And as a realtor, it doesn't take you very long to go through a house if you don't have to sit there and explain everything to everybody, right?
Right.
So you're going to get really good at sifting, because first of all, it's a limited market, by the time you get everything going. So I had actually built up a portfolio of clients where I would just email out, hey, this is the house I've identified. This is the return I expect. This is the capital you'll have to invest in it. And I would email it out to 50, 100 different people. And whoever answered first, that's who got the house. I did most of my real estate work from my desk right there at Diamond Partners in Olathe, Kansas. It's a different way of doing real estate. Again, we can talk more about that on another session. As we go through today, here's the thing I want to remind you. The more legs of the stool that you can get, the more information you can get about a house, like its income, its expenses, its cost of money, and its taxes. That's going to really, really help us. And I'm going to kind of point out those legs of the stool as we go along. So let's just kind of play around, but write these down. You're looking for income, expenses, cost of money, and taxes. Folks, make sure you're muted. I'm kind of running this by myself today. I'm not going to have time to run through everybody on here and mute you. So just make sure you're muted if you don't mind. I'd really appreciate it. This is a sample home here in Olathe, Kansas. I want you to write some of these things down because we're going to refer to these numbers over and over again. This is a real live house. If I said the person who owns this house, Jackie Lennon, would know who this person is. I guarantee you know who this person is.
I was looking for the address.
There's no address on there for a reason. But for all of you who aren't from Kansas, Olathe, Kansas, every city in America has an Olathe, Kansas. Olathe, Kansas is that community that has a really, really good school district. It's not the swankiest address. Like that's Overland Park. You literally cross the street, you're in Overland Park, and your status goes up like half a point or whatever. But Olathe, Kansas is that bell curve neighborhood. Olathe, Kansas is where everybody has 2.5 kids and a minivan so they can get their kids to the soccer games on Saturday morning.
Yeah, it's still.
Everybody knows that particular city in your area, right? And so this is a single family home. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage home. And this person purchased this in 2012 for $167,000. Today, the market value of that home is approximately $285,000. Write that number down, $285,000. This person is not interested in selling this home, but we're going to pretend that they are, and we're going to look at it from a buyer's perspective today. So the current market value is $285,000. The rents are $1,625 a month. And that tenant's been in since May of 2019. And we extended them at a fixed rate during COVID because nobody knew what was going to happen in March of 2020, right? So she's had a nice long-term tenant in there. Here's what's fun. If you take nothing else out of this entire hour of your life today, this is what I want you to understand. Chris, why should I own an investment property as a realtor? A, you don't have a pension plan that I'm aware of. Okay, you can do 401ks and Roth 401ks and all that kind of stuff. But here's the deal. That house was purchased at $167,000. If you account for inflation and what the value of that money is today, then that house value would be $202,000. So there's one thing. It's a great hedge against inflation. But here's the other thing. If you go back to that $167,000, the value of that home is up 70.7%. We haven't talked about cash flow yet. We haven't talked about principal reduction. We haven't talked about tax benefits. And yet the appreciation on that home is 70.7%. Your realtors, who gets to see houses first? Anyway, that's any thoughts about that, Jackie?
I think that's a great return rate.
Yeah. And we haven't even done the other three ways yet. So anyway, let's get started on all of the math, because this is going to be fun. So the gross rent multiplier. This is by far the easiest one. This is the one that I would sit at my desk and do before I would go out and do all of the math and go see all of the homes. Because I began to identify different parts of the Kansas City area that had different GRMs. Some were higher, some were lower. It had to do with the condition of the home or the quality of the school district or the desirability of a zip code. All of those spidey senses things that realtors have to keep involved. The math on a GRM is really, really simple. It's the expected sales price divided by the gross income. So remember that $285,000 is the market value of this home. We're just going to pretend that she's going to sell it. And we do know that $1,625 is the rent. And $1,625 being the rent, if you multiply that by 12, you get $19,500. And you do use the gross rents. And if you do that, then it's 14.6 is what you come up as your GRM. That means you would have to have 14.6 times the gross income to pay for that house. Gross income, the gross rent multiplier is quick and dirty. But here's the problem. It only accounts for income. It doesn't account for expenses. It doesn't account for cost of your money, which I'll get into in a little bit. It doesn't account for your taxes. So it's just a quick and dirty way of checking, do I even want to go see this home? Lower is better. Lower is better. Now, so here, I want you to get your calculators out real fast on your phone or your computer, whatever. What if the rents were $39,000? Now, first of all, that's a ridiculous amount of rent for this house. It's never going to happen. I mean, I could like pay for all the utilities and go mow their lawn. It's not going to happen. But what if the rents were $39,000? What would your GRM be? Everybody get your calculator out.
Half of that, 7.6, 7.3.
Let me, so what I'm going to do there is your GRM would then be 7.3. Everybody come up with 7.3?
Which is lower.
Which is lower, which is what we want. Because then it only takes 7.3 times the rents to pay for the house. Follow me there? So that is a quick and dirty way of just seeing where the house ranks. For instance, if I was looking at a certain zip code and a certain part of that zip code, Jackie, and everything was a 10, why would I even want to go see a 14.6?
Right. It's too high.
But I mean, it better be immaculate. But even if it is immaculate, I mean, am I still going to be paying too much to make any real money on it compared to where else I could buy my money, put my money? Because we're buying income. Make no mistake about this. Spidey senses can change how much you're willing to bend off that 10 number or that 14.6 number, but you're actually buying income. That's what this is about. Any questions or thoughts on that?
Do you have like a rule of thumb, like 10 and under, or I guess it depends on the neighborhood then?
Yeah. So Jackie, we have people from Long Island on this today. We have people from California. We have people from Texas. We have people from Ohio. It could be anything, and it can vary wildly between. So for instance, if you and I were looking in Leawood, Kansas, it would be much different than if we were looking in Raytown, Missouri.
Right. Gotcha.
Okay. So everything's got to be relative to its scale. There's somebody that asked a question, what do we do with the GRM number once we calculate it? Is it just an indicator? Yes, it's just an indicator. That's all it is. It's giving us a relative place to start to know where to look. You're going to have to go through the MLS. You might have to buddy up with a property manager somewhere and say, hey, listen, what are the rents in this neighborhood? Hey, pro tip for you. There's a website called HotPads. It's now owned by Zillow. I get it. But HotPads, HOTPADS.com, that will show you places that are for rent in your area. And so you can begin to look around there. But this is a boots on the ground thing. You'll learn rents around the sections of town you begin to really learn. Again, I've only got so much time today, but we could go on and on. You know, hey, if you like what you're hearing today and you want to learn more, email me that kind of stuff and let me know the interest. But let's continue here. So now we're going to talk about capitalization rates. I love capitalization rates for two reasons. One is it not only accounts for expenses, it also accounts for income. And two is almost all newer investors or intermediate investors love to talk about cap rate because it makes them sound smarter. And so I really want to know what it is as well, right? Cap rate, what's the cap rate? I'm looking for this cap rate. I'm looking for that cap rate. And you'll see why in a minute. That's okay. It's better than GRM, but it still doesn't let us know what to really expect the first year. But I like it because, again, it helps me narrow down neighborhoods and compare this house to that house without going into too deep a math. So to figure out your cap rate, your capitalization rate, you take your net operating income and you divide it by the current market value, and that equals your cap rate. Now, I just threw a new term in there to you, and that's, so you probably got current market value of 285, but NOI, net operating income, is essentially, I don't want to overcomplicate this, it's all your income minus all your expenses. Mm-hmm. Folks, I can't discuss this in enough detail, but all of your income is all of your income. That's your rents, your expected rents, your expected late fees, your expected laundry money. If you have like a 8-unit and you've got a laundry machine and you get quarters for that. It's everything that brings money in. Your expenses are everything that takes money out. Okay. Your mortgage payment, your insurance, if you have property management. If you don't have property management, who's advertising the place? You know, all of those kinds of things, including utilities, because vacancy is an expense, but so are the utilities wise. So you've got to figure all of that in to come up with your net operating income. Garbage in, garbage out. If you look at a lot of realtors who say, hey, I can sell investment properties, when it comes to expenses, they'll put down the insurance, and they might put down the HOA fee. Well, if you've ever owned a rental property, I know Jim Kirkpatrick's on here, and I'm not asking him to kick in yet, but if you've ever owned a rental property, you know there's a lot more expenses than the insurance and the HOA fee. All right, and I'll get to that a little bit later again. But in this example, what I've done is 19,500 is our expected rents, remember, 1625 times 12. And then what I've done, come up with as expenses is 6734. Remember, this is a property we actually manage. This is actual numbers for her last year. I went in from January 1st up to yesterday, and she had $3,499 in taxes, $1,507 in management fees to my company, $378 in repairs, which is really low, but it's a well-kept house. Okay, and most of that was like plumbing things. And then $1,350 in insurance. So that's her actual expenses that have gone through our company. All right. So if you come up with there, then it's $12,766 is your net operating income. So if you take your net operating income and you divide it by the market value, then it comes up with a 4.5. Everybody see that? You can do it on your calculator there. So again, it counts for income and expenses, which is important. We have a better idea of what the actual return on this house is going to be.
Oh, doggy. This is about dog.
Don't know what that was. So if we go to income and expenses there, but what if the rent was 39,000? Again, I'm only doing this as an extreme example, just to kind of show you higher is better. If the rent were 39,000, what would your cap rate be? Figure that out for me. It's your NOI divided by market value. Did everybody come up with about 11.3%? Because remember, if rents were 39,000, you'd still have to subtract your 6734, which would be 12.7, which would be a lot higher. And then you divide that by the market value, and that's where I come up with 11.3.
Hey, Chris,
Yes, Gary.
I was told that, yes, higher is better on cap rate, but at a certain point, too high gets risky. At what point does your spidey sense kick in? You say, I got a concern.
Well, it comes into those spidey senses, Gary. And what that basically means is you're as a real estate investor agent, I get a lot of people that say, well, I want a 14% cap rate. Well, to get a higher cap rate, I'm generally going into much more risky neighborhoods. It's more of a cash flow neighborhood. Do they generate more cash flow is how you're going to get a higher cap rate. But they're probably going to have far less appreciation. This goes back to the whole strategies and criteria that I need to do a whole nother webinar on, essentially. But what's your risk rate? And let me tell you, as a guy who oversees a company that since 2006 has tens of thousands of rental years, the higher the cap rate in general, the more transient the tenant. I don't know how else to say that. So generally the lower price the home, so therefore the lower price the rent, therefore the lower income of the tenant, and therefore the more transient. Now, am I saying that wealthier tenants, higher income tenants can't be a pain in default? I'm not saying that at all. I'm just simply saying that there's a direct correlation between the height of the cap rate in some neighborhoods and how much money the property manager is going to make.
Good answer.
And I end up there are a lot of times when I've advised people, who's really going to make money on this home? It ain't you. It's going to be me, because I'm going to constantly be charging you for repairs, for lease outs, for whatever. Go back to our example house, Gary, in a bell curve house in a bell curve neighbor, suburb. That house has had a tenant now for 4 or 5 years, and it will probably continue with that tenant. That's a stable tenant. That's where you make money as a landlord. Jackie, any questions more about the cap rate before I move on?
I think you've covered it good. So you just basically take your rents minus your repairs, and the repairs overall are going to correlate to the tenant and the quality thereof.
Yes.
Is what I got out of that.
I see a lot of investors get so tuned in on the return. I want the highest return possible. I want the highest return possible. That's great. Love it. Knock yourself out. But it seldom turns out to be exactly that. Remember when I said garbage in, garbage out? You've got to account for the real expectations of the numbers.
Chris, one thing that I had a question on was on your tenants. I thought you had said one time it's better if they do change all the time because you can make more money. Now I'm hearing you say just the opposite. It's better to have a steady tenant.
Well, no. So let me be very clear. Maybe I was being facetious when I said that, Rolene. As a property manager, I make more money when tenants turn over. But
Okay.
but my fiduciary duty is towards my owners. I
Got it.
want my owners to make more money,
Thank you.
because the more money my owners make, the happier they are with me, the more they tell their friends. I've had a $200 a month advertising budget since 2006. Almost all of our work comes through word of mouth or Google reviews or things like that. So the more money I can make my agents and make my tenant or owners, the better off we are. So in the world of real estate, folks, tenants are our customers, but the owners are our clients. in most
Thank you.
states. Make sure you check your state. So I love this quote by Snoop Dogg, by the way. So those are two easy ways for you to calculate in it. And if you learn those, again, this is a skill. Learn them one at a time. But new investors love to talk about cap rates, and they love to ask agents about cap rates because they're looking for somebody that can actually teach them and lead them. I'm going a little bit slower here than I wanted to, but I just want to make this point. If you're an agent thinking about working with more investors, the problem is if a would-be investor calls 1,000 agents and says, do you work with investment properties? How many of them are going to say yes? Go ahead, Jackie. Tell me how many are going to say yes?
Every single one.
Every single one of them. How many of them actually take the time to learn this stuff, though? I can't tell you how many realtors, and God love them, they refer people to our property management company, and then the owner says to me or says to Jimmy, who runs the company, hey, my realtor told me I could get $1,900 a month rent for this. And Jimmy is looking back at him going, really? That would be incredible. Tell me how to do that. And it costs the owner money because sometimes we have them really dig in and we start trying to rent it at $1,900. And 3 months later, we get them down to about $1,650 where we thought it would be. You've got to do your math first. So take the time to actually learn this. Trish Peterson in the chat box, right? Use it to compare multiple properties and select which ones schedule showings with your investment. Exactly. Exactly. And maybe only look at properties with GRMs under 10. Well, Trish, where you live, that may be very doable. Where a lot of these people live, that may be impossible. Just sort of depends. So anyway, it's all relative to where you are and the relative. The reason I had so many investors from Vancouver to San Diego is because they could buy houses for what they were paying for parking places. It was like candy out here. They were excited about the returns I could give them. Anyway, let's I'll look at this one more chat here and then we'll go from there. Oh, Tracy, you're very, very kind. Thank you very much. So now let's talk about cash on cash. I'm going to zoom through this because this isn't really popular with a lot, but this is for your cash buyers mostly. Cash buyers, because if they're not going to have a cost of money, which there is a cost of money. There's always a cost of money, but cash on cash, this is for your cash buyers. It's cash flow before taxes divided by cash invested, cash on cash. So there's a $100,000 house. I want to pay $100,000. I don't want any mortgages on it. So what we do is we take our net operating income, our NOI, remember what that was, minus our debt service, which if they're paying cash is zero. And then we end up with our cash flow before taxes. Okay. Which is 12,766. We divide that by the expected purchase price, which that 285 number is still valid here, but I'm estimating $2,500 in closing costs because that's money invested. It's gone. It's no longer there. And that's where I come up with 4.4%. So if I'm buying income with my $100,000 in this example, I would be earning $4,400. That year. Make sense? Now, if you don't include depreciation and you don't include appreciation and you don't include, the other little tax benefits you get, well, 4.4% doesn't sound that cool because right now in the stock market, although there's growing risk, right now in the stock market, I might be getting 8, 10, 12% returns. But you're going to see in a little bit how this can all be greatly skewed to the favor of the real estate agent looking to work with real estate investors and therefore the investor themselves. Any quick questions about that, Jackie, so I can move on?
I think we're good. I'm good.
Okay. So if rents were 39,000, you would get 11.2% instead of 4.4%. Again, I'm making up wild accusations on rents. But I'm just showing you that higher would be better in this case because then I'd be getting 11.2% on my cash, not 4.4%. All right. So here's what I want to ask you guys next. Let's just take a second here for a second. How many of you have been to the doctors and you've seen this? Math is not generally everybody's favorite thing. So where are you on the scale right now of understanding this and learning this? Because we're about to dive in deep on a total return. So it's okay as we move forward here into the next section here on total returns. If you just go back and if you want this recording, you're going to email me at kwmapschris@gmail.com. And I'll send you the recording and you can go back and you can learn this stuff. All right. But we're going to go a little bit fast here and figure some things out. So just relax and have some fun. Oh, I see some threes on here and some twos and some ones. Fantastic. I don't see any tens. That's got to be good news. All right. Whoops. By the way, I got to go bicycling down in Florida last month to mile 0. That was a lot of fun. Those of you that know me know I love to go bicycling. So buckle up. Here we go. This is total return on investment. I need to give you some ground rules first. We're going to do this with appreciation and without appreciation. With appreciation, to figure out the total return on investment, it's your cash flow before taxes plus your principal reduction plus your tax benefits, plus or minus, plus appreciation divided by your cash invested. So you might want to write that down while we talk about it. Cash flow before taxes plus principal reduction plus taxes plus appreciation divided by cash invested. Warning, 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 warning. As with everything that I say and everything that I do for my investors, I always let them know these are estimates. These are not promises. These are not guarantees. And especially when it has to do with appreciation, I can tell you what appreciation was easily. All of us realtors can tell you what appreciation was. I can tell you what appreciation is sort of like, what is it, happening right now. But for me to tell about what appreciation is in the future, I would be very careful about guaranteeing that. Because all my life, I heard real estate only goes up and up and up and up and up. And then in 2009, guess what? Now, for you people on the East and West Coast, 2009 was really late 2007, 2008. By the way, if you hadn't screwed up all the banking, us people in the Midwest would have been fine. Thank you again, people on the coast. But that's just a whole nother rant that I could do an hour on. All right. And yet, be very careful when making promises about any of this stuff. If you're using garbage numbers in because you want to make the deal look good, you're going to get to explain that later to somebody who's really good at math and maybe a legal person. So make sure that you're using real numbers. And then the other one is just cash flow as total return without appreciation, which is basically the same thing as cash flow before taxes plus principal reduction plus taxes divided by cash invested. All right. So let's go to a total return example. You're going to want to write some of these numbers down. You're going to want to write some of these numbers down because we're going to use them. Let's say the purchase cost is $290,000 for this $285,000 home. Now, why is it $290,000? Because I'm throwing in closing costs. And some of you may be saying, Chris, you're throwing up a prayer here because just to get the house, I'm going to have to offer $295,000, and then so I get it. I get it. We're just using examples. Okay. Cash invested is $90,500 because I'm going to account for the 30% down. Did you hear what I said? 30% down. I'm just going to take a kind of a stand here. If I'm representing you as an investor and you don't have a minimum of 20% down, and 20% down, I'm still kind of shaky on 25% down, because 25% down, you usually get a little bit better interest rate. But for those of you that survive through harder economic times, for those of you that are a little bit older, like I see Steve Hoagland's name on here, and maybe a few other people, and you remember the 70s and our parents buying homes at 14.1%. If you don't think that can happen again, pay attention. You never know what's coming. So I'm a big believer in 25 to 30% down. And then we added closing costs in there. And then financing, if you take the remainder of 199.5 at 4% for investors, they usually pay a little bit more. Again, plug in whatever numbers actually make sense for you and your current situation. Then your principal and interest is going to be about $952. So write those numbers down. Your depreciation is going to be $72.54. How did I get there? Well, in this area, it's general that the land costs account for about anywhere between 20 and 30% of the purchase cost or the purchase price, right? Because land doesn't depreciate. You're only depreciating the building. Now, some of you might go in, well, there's accelerated depreciation. We're not going to talk about. We're going to keep this easy. All right. But 70% of the building cost of 285. And then your 27 and a half years of depreciation, it's about 3.63% per year. So if you take 285 times 0.70 times 0.03636, you end up with about 72.54. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? All right. Gross income.
Eita, essa outra classe é mais importante.
Okay, so your gross income, I did this a little bit differently because gross income is basically your expected rents, your scheduled rents minus your vacancy. And I only did about 3% vacancy because right now, every time, and for the last couple of years, and believe me, this is not a good thing, every time we put a for rent sign up in Johnson County, I get about 10 or 12 applications. And for those of you that think, wow, that sounds great. Yeah, have 11 people pissed off at you because you didn't rent them the house.
Right.
There's a lot of stress out there, folks. You think it's bad on the buyer side, it's just as bad on the tenant side. Okay. And then we're going to go to expenses, that $77.34, which is the same as before. I just added another $1,000 for just in case. You know, I threw that in there just in case. And then I've got, so you do all that, and I come up with an NOI of $11,181. So does everybody have all those written down? Great. As you finish writing those down, Danielle, I see your question. How is yearly depreciation determined? Residential real estate, which is what we're talking about, can be depreciated at 27 and a half years. And if you figure that out, it's 3.636% per year. And then you got to figure your building costs. And then it says, do you think now is a good time to invest? Yes. Considering house prices have gone up. Yes. I have no idea where house prices are going to go. None whatsoever. And when you put all this together, and you're realtors, you should own properties. If you don't believe in your product, anyway, so that's, I'm having a little bit of fun with you, but it's always a good time to invest. Because all of those people that bought investment properties from me in 6, 7, and 8, for those of you that were around, prices were doing what? Jackie, you were around. Prices were going like this, right? They were going up,
Yes.
and up, and up, and up. Even after they went down, if the value of that house went down, and in a lot of cases it did, the rents didn't. In fact, a lot of the people who lost their homes came into the rental market. Rents actually went up. So unless you had to sell, you didn't lose anything. You made the same amount as I promised you or more because rents went up. So if you're gonna do this buy and hold strategy, by the way, there's 3 great books that Keller Williams offered, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, which can be a little bit pie in the sky. Sorry, Gary, if you're watching this, but those numbers don't really work anymore, but it's a great principles book. The flip book and the hold book, that hold book that you can buy through Keller Williams is fantastic. All right. So those are the numbers. Let's go back now and let's pay attention here. So cash flow before taxes on this home. If we take the numbers that we plugged in and we say our NOI is 1181 and we subtract our 952 times 12, which is 11,424, this particular home, if you were buying it at market value today, would have a cash flow at 30% down of minus $243. Who's excited about owning a property and losing money? Nobody. Nobody. But this addresses the reality of today's market. Okay. If you want cash flow, you're probably going to have to put 35% down or 40 or 45 or 50. There might be a case where you're willing to put down 25 and lose more cash, which will change all the numbers we're going to do. But we're just saying this is what it is. All right. Maybe you could talk to your property manager about getting another $25 a month for rent. Then you'll take care of it. But we'll figure this out. So your cash flow before taxes, which is your benefit number one of rental properties, is minus $243. So let's go to the next. Benefit number two is principal reduction. This is by far my favorite. Okay, when you really understand this, it might be your favorite too. Principal reduction is your annual debt service minus the interest equals principal reduction. So if you take that $11,424, and after the first year, you will have paid $7,916 of that will be interest, which means $3,508 is principal reduction. Your tenants paid off your mortgage in the tune of $3,508. Now, is that money that you can go to the ATM and take out? No. You're not going to Cancun on this money, but it's real money. It's real equity. They're paying your loan. If they call you and say that the toilet's not working, go fix the toilet and say, thank you for calling me, because they just paid off $3,508 of your loan. Any questions on that, Jackie?
Nope. I think take care of your tenants is definitely number one if they're paying your bills, essentially.
Yes. Yes. I see in the chat box, yes, it is being recorded. Matt Johnson, thank you for putting those three books in there. So if you want to reference to those books. So, but anyway, that's my favorite. I just get a kick out of somebody else paying off my loans. I mean, when I was younger and broker, much broker, by the way, I mean, I'm just a college dropout that figured all this stuff out by reading and going to every class I could and flying to Phoenix and sitting in seminars. But what I would tell you is this: if anybody would have been willing to pay my car payments or my credit reports, and all I had to do was maybe put air in the tires every once in a while, I would have loved that. I mean, just sign me up. All right, let's go to the next benefit of owning real estate investment property, and that is the taxes, the tax bennies. Here's how you figure out your tax benefits. You take your NOI, your net operating income that we've discussed, you subtract your interest, you subtract that depreciation we figured out, and that's your taxable income. Okay, and that taxable income is going to tell us whether we saved taxes or we owe taxes, and we're going to multiply that by our tax bracket. Okay, so let me just slow down here just for a second and walk you through this. Our NOI was $11,181. We're going to subtract the interest we paid that we just figured out on principal reduction. By the way, you can see those on an amortization schedule. You're all realtors. If you've never looked at closely at an amortization schedule, go study one. Find your productivity coach, find your team leader, find an investor, find your closing company. Go figure out that. But that's how I came up with the 7,916. And then the depreciation was 7,254. And that equaled a negative number of 3,989. Then I multiply that number by your tax bracket. As realtors, I went to if you Google it, you can just Google it, the different tax brackets for 2021, 2022. Okay. And I picked married filing jointly. And then I picked what I think most realtors should be making if they're buying in real estate investment properties. And so most of you are going to figure into somewhere around the 24% tax bracket. Talk to your CPA, talk to your numbers nerd, maybe your MCA. Sorry, Tricia, if you're on here, that can help you figure out your tax bracket. So, but if you're in the 24% tax bracket, you take that 3,989 times 0.24, and you end up with 957. Now, it's still a negative number. But because it's a negative number, that's a good thing. That's the number you get to tell the government you're losing money. You're making money on a property. You get to tell the United States government you're losing money. Is this a great country or what? Quit complaining to everybody about how things aren't fair and start figuring out how to capitalize on them. So you get to tell the government you're losing money in the tune of $957. So that's going to be we're gonna subtract that, or we're gonna add that. I'm sorry, we're gonna add that to our earnings because we're saving $957 on our taxes. Now, if I had done this and if I had taken my NOI and I subtract my interest and my depreciation, then 3989 was a positive number, then I would multiply that times 0.24 and it would be a $957 in taxes I had to pay. So we would take that away from the return. Is that clear as mud, Jackie?
It would be an expense.
It would be an expense, yes. Just like that $243 that we lost on this property in cash flow is an expense. Okay. All right. Let's go to benefit number 4 of owning investment property. No, never guarantee appreciation. In 2009 and 2010, I was calculating negative appreciation. For those of you who got your real estate license 6 years ago and you're walking around going, I love real estate. It's the easiest thing in the world. Wait till you have 1.5 year listings.
Or you have to show 30 to 50 properties to one buyer.
Yeah. Can we see another property? Because I know there's 1,000 homes for sale right now. No, that's a nightmare as a buyer's agent, isn't it, Jackie?
Yes.
Yes. So, all right. So we're coming in hot here. So appreciation. If the market value is 285,000 and I'm expecting another 7%, which I've seen estimates of 8 or 9 in Olathe next year. So I always drop it by 1 just to kind of protect myself. That means the value of that home would go up about almost $20,000. So I'm going to account for that. But I can plug in whatever number there that feels most comfortable, 5%, 10%, whatever percent. Just be realistic. Be realistic, okay? If interest rates, by the way, if interest rates were all of a sudden to go up to 8%, would that be a real number? Buying would probably shut down, multiple offers would go away, people would start hanging on to their cash. Listen, during the crash, I lost $23,500 in commissions in one day because the bank stopped lending. Again, thank you, West Coast and East Coast. Really appreciate you guys. But the banks all shut down lending. 2 of my houses, the investor had enough money to pay cash for those properties, but I couldn't talk him into it because he said, no, if the banks aren't giving anyway, I'm hanging on to what I got. This can all change overnight, folks. If you don't think it can, wake up. So, but what's really funny is that person still owns 39 doors with me. And he says, man, I really should have bought those places. Because it would have made sense. So anyway, so never guarantee this. Let's go to the next one though. So if you take that, if we plug those numbers in that we just did with appreciation, if we take that minus $243, and then we add in the principal reduction of 3,508 and the tax savings of 957 and the appreciation, we come up with a $24,172 benefit. If we take that and divide it by our cash invested that we talked about earlier of 90, the return on our money is 26.7%. Show me where you get that in the stock market. I double dog dare you. I have roasted stock market people on this over and over and over. I used to hold seminars and there would always be like, well, I'm a stockbroker. Let me tell you why your $90,000 is better. I get to this point and I say, please come up and tell me again. They're quiet. All right. Look at though, but be careful because I always say, listen, this is your whipped cream and the nuts and the cherry on top. But let's buy this on sound fundamentals. Let's just say that the market crashes and you don't earn any appreciation. Without appreciation, you take those same numbers minus the appreciation and you end up with a 4.7% return. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, maybe I'll just keep my money in the stock market. Okay, then do that. A lot of people are going to say, you know what, over any 10-year period, it is going to appreciate. It's hard to keep housing down. It bounces back in a hurry. So as realtors, you got to decide whether you believe in your product or not. Make sense? Hope it makes sense. Okay. So how many of you feel like this is what we've been discussing all day? Yeah. So some of you are. It's okay. I don't know what this means either. Don't even care. It's just a cool picture I found. So here's what I want to say to you guys. This is being recorded. And if you send me an email to kwmapschris@gmail.com, I will make sure that you get notification when I pretty this up a little bit and put it out there so that you can access the recording. If you want copies of the slides, put that in your email. I'm happy to send you the copies of the slides. It's just basic math. There's no big trade secrets, although it does say all rights reserved, copyright, blah, 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 at Astor Realty, because I do use this for my business. But you're welcome to use these to go back through to help. I do have one favor to ask you, though. You know, this is my big ask. I'm not selling you MAPS coaching, although I think you should be in MAPS coaching if you're making at least $150,000 a year. But that's not what I'm here selling. As a property manager, you will, if you Google us at Astor Realty KC Property Manager, you will see we have a 4.1% rating, which is fantastic as far as property managers go. I double dog dare you to just look around for property. It's funny. But I'm asking you to review this. Either give me 5 stars or 3 stars or whatever you think it was worth. And if you want to leave some words. I would really appreciate that. But it also helps offset. If you want to have some fun, go in and read some of the reviews that I get 1 stars for. I got a 3-star review recently for our cheeseburgers are a bit greasy and our fries are undercooked.
Oh, gosh.
I don't even know how to respond to that one. Okay, because they were talking about a restaurant, obviously. But here's the thing about Google reviews. All I can do is answer them. By the way, Google lets everybody in the world review us, but we can't review Google. Has anybody ever noticed that? So a lot of our 1-star reviews are people who are upset because we kept part of their deposit or all of their deposit. There are a few 1 stars in there that are actually good points, and we've made corrections because of them. But I make a lot of headway. People choose us based on our stars. So if you don't mind, go in and rate what you thought of this. You would really help me out a lot. I'm going to ask you to consider this question before you leave. What do you want your net worth to be in 2027? Gary Keller is famous for saying, and says it almost every time he gets up on a stage, that most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5 years. If I've heard him say that once, I've heard him say it 100 times. Most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5. Where do you want your net worth to be in 2027? So for some of you, it might just be, hey, the first thing you got to do is learn this math. If I can learn it, you can learn it.